5 ships, fake humanitarian flags, a $30 billion narcotics pipeline hiding in plain sight 60 nautical miles off Cartagena. The MQ-9 Reaper seized the forgery first. In the next hour, USS Freedom, 2 Seahawks, and a single Hellfire will decide if that convoy lives or dies. Stay with me as we break down the precise sequence, why the rules of engagement shifted, how a 57mm Mark 110 set the table, and what the Reaper vaporized at 6,000 meters. You'll understand why overwhelming force, fast, beats cargo value every time. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. Costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the U.S. military attacked a vessel in the eastern Pacific Ocean and killed 2 men on Tuesday. The U.S. military has struck more suspected drug vessels, this time in the eastern Pacific Ocean. It was the first known U.S. military operation in the Pacific since President Trump kicked off a new offensive against the drug trade.
5 ships in a neat line looked like mercy runs. The Reaper did not blink. It held them because the story on the radios was too clean, and the fabric on those masts didn't match any known relief banner. They worked a ruse built for quick checks. Pennants that read aid from a mile out. Manifests with neat stamps and tight cargo lists. A scripted hailing call that ticked the boxes for port inspectors and patrol craft. But at night, with NAV lights dead and call signs that drifted, the act frayed. AIS tracks lined up with a charity lane, but the heat didn't. Infrared showed mass where rice and meds would run light. The tarps lay tight and low, not bulky with crates. Deck cranes cycled in short, heavy lifts, the kind you do when you move drums and dense bundles, not pallets of gauze and water. Spacing told on them too. Wake stayed trimmed, intervals fixed, an escort posture with a point boat and a tail, not a loose aid scatter. The center hulls hugged the leader as if they guarded value, not relief.
Hours later, Hegseth said that the military had struck another vessel in the eastern Pacific on Wednesday, killing 3 men.
7 strikes, killing at least 32 people, were conducted in the Caribbean near Venezuela, where the U.S. military footprint.
Strikes came on top of at least 7 others in the Caribbean in a campaign that has raised U.S. tensions with Venezuela and Colombia.
Then the intel mosaic clicked. Flag registry data didn't match hull numbers. Paint lines were fresh where names had been ground and re-stenciled. Paperwork showed seals that read right on the radio, but scanners caught fakes. The watch kept observe and shadow, but the threat picture climbed fast. Armed lookouts surfaced, elbows set on rails. Long shapes the length of AKs broke the tarp edges. Tubes with the fat shadow of RPGs sat under canvas by the bow. Deception plus guns moves the legal bar. That turns a maritime check into a combat interdiction when you're outside any port control and the other side signals fight. The Reaper pinned it. Forged flags, visible weapons, a fleet dressed as charity but postured like a guard convoy. Rules shifted. USS Freedom now treated them as an armed trafficking unit. With the mask torn off, speed ruled. Watch how a 57mm Mark 110 and 1 Hellfire take a 5-ship problem and end the debate before the hour hand makes a full sweep. 5 ships try to form a gun line. You break it before they split or sink their own cargo. That is the job. At contact minus minutes, USS Freedom pushes 2 SH-60 Seahawks wide and high. The Reaper stays on station as the single, steady set of eyes, feeding bearings and ranges in clean lines. The surface radar shifts to fire control. You feel the net tighten. The convoy starts a lateral slide, a crescent shaping to delay and dump. Around 70 fighters move on decks, rifles up, tubes coming out from tarps. That is the tell. They plan to blind you, stall you, then roll packages overboard.
A U.S. military strike last night off Colombia was the 8th strike in recent months against suspected smugglers. At least 2 were killed.
Turning now to the president's widening war on alleged drug trafficking, not only in the Caribbean, but now also the Pacific Ocean.
Posted by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth appears to show a speedboat half loaded with large black bundles slicing through the waves.
Sequence wins. The Mark 110 57mm opens with airburst. Timed rounds throw a white curtain over the lead boats, chopping sight lines and forcing gunners down. Then the switch, direct fire into helms and sensor masts. Steel shears. Wheels lock. 1 leader veers. Meanwhile, the Seahawks rake the flanks. Door guns walk lines along rails. Rockets carve water just off hulls, pushing the outer boats inward. The center ships crowd each other wake to wake, turning 5 targets into 2 tight clusters you can service in order.
Military operation in the Pacific, the boat taken out off the coast of Colombia, which produces 90% of the cocaine. Residents has argued the boats were carrying drugs headed for the United States, but most of the drugs trafficked through the Caribbean are headed for Europe.
The U.S. military has struck more suspected drug vessels, this time in the Eastern Pacific Ocean.
The Reaper keeps the thread. It streams target quality coordinates and quick damage calls, so the ship sensors stay on solutions, not hunting. That frees seconds, and seconds decide who fires first. Decisive strike. 1 AGM-class Hellfire releases at 6,000 meters. It rides a clean vector and knifes into a midship seam where fuel meets chemical drums. The hull folds from the inside. Fire takes the deck in a breath. 1 threat gone. Collapse follows. Another boat loses mobility to 57mm hits. Rudder chewed. Engine coughing black. Return fire thins. Fighters drop to decks or jump. Boarding teams move fast on dead metal, ladders clattering, flex cuffs ready.
Regional escalation, this happens, and even as Blinken's presence is there in the Middle East, which makes this attack us again, telling the Houthis, quote, that they will bear the responsibility for the consequences should they continue to threaten lives in the region's critical waterways. So what more will result besides these words? We're not sure. We know.
In under an hour, the cargo shifts hands. Meth and fentanyl pulled. 5 hulls either seized or sunk. Shooters out of the fight. The cell window closed. The sea goes quiet. The larger hit lands next. Logistics bled where the money moves through paper and fronts. Speed kills the business model. Layered force, sensor, ship gun, drone strike. Hits faster than cash can move, and the logistics behind those flags crack. You saw it at sea. The follow-on lands ashore when sanctions drafting starts against front companies and their overseas suppliers. That is how a fleet action bleeds a balance sheet. If you want the mindset and the methods that win these water wars, subscribe. Then tell me, would you have led with gunfire or the Hellfire? Comment your choice below. The next fight starts with manifests and money, not missiles. Subscribe and join a community that seeks to understand the realities of modern conflict.